The forge fire had long since banked to coals when Aldrich heard it. Not a cry, nothing so clear as that. A sound more like the weight of something giving out. He set down the water pail he'd been carrying from the well and stood still in the dark, listening. There it was again, low just beyond the split-rail fence at the edge of his yard, where the pine scrub pressed up against the back of his property. He took the lantern off its hook by the door and went. She was on the ground on one knee, one hand braced against the frozen earth, trying very hard not to make another sound. He could see it in every line of her. The tight jaw, the controlled breathing, the way she held herself as if she'd learned long ago, that no one came faster for the noise. A length of poacher's snare wire had caught her left leg above the boot, bitten through the leather, drawn blood. She'd been walking on it long enough that the cold had done its own damage alongside. Aldrich set the lantern down in the dirt beside her. She was an orc woman, green-skinned, tall even on one knee, dark hair braided with iron beads, dressed in the worn traveling leathers of someone who had been on the road a long while. Her eyes, when they found his face, were braced for what usually came next. He was already crouching, already looking at the wire. "Hold still," he said. "I've got a pair of tin snips in my belt. This'll take a moment." It took less than a moment. His hands had 30 years of working with metal and with fine tolerances. And a poacher's wire was nothing to a man like that. He worked it loose without pulling, freed the coil, and set it aside. Then he looked at the leg, at the cut, at the cold, at the way she was carrying her weight. "Can you walk if I give you a shoulder?" he asked. She was trying to read something in his face, the way a person does when they've been turned away enough times that every open door feels like a question still pending. "I was told there was an inn in the village," she said. "There is. Rolf closed up 2 hours ago." He glanced at the sky. "It's 3 hours till dawn and 4 degrees past cold. My back room has a cot and a blanket. Come on." He offered her his arm. She took it. He got her inside, got her boot off, got the wound cleaned and packed with the poultice from the medicine tin above the hearth. Good for cuts, and cold, better than nothing. He warmed broth on the coals and set the cup on the stool beside the cot without fuss, the way a man does a thing when he's not looking for things, just looking to get it done. "I can pay," she said. "You can rest," he said, and went back to his room. She ran a fever for 2 days. Nothing dangerous. He brought broth in the mornings and checked the wound in the evenings, and on the second afternoon he found her sitting up, clear-eyed and apparently bothered by the idleness. "Your forge smoke smells of sulfur," she said when he came in with the evening cup. "The ore you're burning has a pyrite vein through it. There's a dried yarrow root that'll pull the sulfur clean when you add it at the smelting stage. You'll get a better edge and half the lung burn." He looked at her. "I know ores," she said a little defensively. "I'd be grateful for the yarrow," he said. "I'll get some from the herb woman tomorrow." "The herb woman in this village keeps her yarrow wet," Vara said. "It's lost half its pull. You want it dried on a warm shelf 3 weeks before you burn it. I can show you." On the third morning she was up and moving, the limp still there but the wound sealed clean. She appeared at the forge door with her sleeves rolled and her braids tied back, and helped him work in a silence that was, he found, unexpectedly comfortable, handing him tools when he reached, keeping the bellows steady, not talking when there was nothing to say. The miller's boy came by at noon with a shoulder he'd wrenched pulling a cart from the ditch. 12 years old and doing his best not to cry, his father beside him looking helpless. The village healer was 3 days' ride east, gone to the winter settlements. Vara looked at the shoulder. She said, "This will hurt for 1 second, and then stop. Nod if you're ready." He nodded. She reset it. He gasped once and then stared at his arm in something close to wonder. "What do I owe you?" his father asked. "Nothing," she said, and went back to the forge. Word moves fast in a small place. By the next morning, the innkeeper's wife had come about her husband's horse, which had been walking wrong for a month. Vara went to the stable, ran her hands along the animal's legs, asked quiet questions about its feed and water, and named the joint root rot exactly, a thing 3 different men had looked at and not diagnosed. Aldrich watched from the fence and said nothing, but that evening he set 2 bowls on the table without fuss, just set them down and ladled the stew, and they ate together in the warm dark, the fire going well, the yarrow drying on its shelf above the coals. She stayed a week, then 2. She fixed the medicine chest at the inn, full of misidentified herbs since the last healer passed through. She splinted a child's broken finger, treated a carpenter's infected hand, and told old Marin who'd been coughing all autumn. Exactly which three things in her cottage were making it worse. The village had feared her for the first 2 days. By the third week, they didn't know how they'd gotten along without her. It was the end of the second week when the riders came. Two of them, orc men in the colors of the Stone Marrow clan from the eastern ridges, pushing hard. They asked at the inn for a healer named Vara, and Rolf told them. She was at the blacksmith's forge, before he'd thought about whether he ought to. Aldrich was at the anvil when they came through the yard gate. Vara came out of the forge behind him and stopped. The elder of the two riders dismounted and held out a sealed letter, the wax stamp of a clan elder's council on it, cracked now from the road. "We've been looking 3 years," he said. "The council met last autumn. Dravak's testimony was found false. His own daughter gave evidence against him in the end." He paused. "Your name is cleared, healer. The charge is gone from every record. And the Stone Marrow chief's eldest son, the one Dravak said you'd harmed. He's been asking after you since he was well enough to ask." Vara took the letter. She held it in both hands and looked at the seal for a long moment, the way a person looks at a thing they'd stopped letting themselves hope for. Aldrich said nothing. He'd heard enough to understand the shape of it. 3 years of a false charge. 3 years of wandering with a lie on her back, a snare in the dark at the edge of a stranger's fence. The riders stayed the night. In the morning, they left a clan gift at the door. Wrapped iron ore stock from the eastern vein. 2 months of quality work at least. The kind blacksmiths talked about the way other men talked about good farmland. Aldrich looked at the bundle for a while. Then he looked at Vara. "You don't have to stay," he said. "Now that it's cleared." She was quiet for a moment. "This village needs a healer," she said. "It has for years. And your forge still produces sulfur smoke when the wind is from the north." He almost smiled at that. "Is that the only reason?" She met his eyes. "No," she said. She stayed through the autumn and into the first hard frost, and by the time the snow came, she had a proper healer's room set up in the back of the inn, with the right herbs dried on the right shelves, and a schedule that had half the valley, knowing they could come to Duskholm and be seen to. And one evening in deep winter, when the forge fire was low, and the stew was good, and the snow was piling soft against the window, Vara set down her bowl and said, with the same directness she brought to everything, to wounds and oars and dislocated shoulders and false accusations weathered in silence, "I would like to stay past the winter. I would like to stay as your wife, if you'll have me." Aldrich had lived alone for 8 years. His wife's name had been Aaliyah, and he had not thought he would come to a table like this again. Warm food, warm fire, someone across from him who knew his habits and hadn't run from any of them. He said yes before she had finished the sentence. The village of Duskholm made no fuss and threw no feast, because the people there had already seen what they needed to see, the blacksmith who'd carried a wounded stranger in from the cold, and the healer who'd given back more than anyone had thought to ask for, and the particular warmth that glowed from the forge house every evening now. No one had witnessed the sacrifice of it, the quiet cost of simply being decent when it would have been easier not to be, but the valley knew the fruit of it. And a small place, that is the only accounting that has ever mattered.